Where is hip hop going? That's the topic for today. I did discuss, being tired of the negative energy in hip hop. Now, this topic is about where is hip hop going? Now, there's a few other things I wanted to discuss in my other video in regards to, the negative energy in hip hop. But the video ran longer than I expected it to be. It ran, just over 25 minutes. And whilst I try to keep my videos within, say, as short as possible, 10, 15 minutes maybe, I felt that I had to say everything I had to say in that video, and if it took me half an hour to say it, I would have done it, because it just needed to be said. Someone has to come out and talk about and speak on these issues that's affecting hip-hop. So I might touch on that in this video, even though this video is about where hip-hop is going in terms of its destination. So let's start off with this. To me, I predict that in the next 5 to 10 years, hip-hop will not be controlled by the African community anymore. In other words, hip-hop will completely become exactly what rock and roll did for African Americans and the African community. It was a genre that was once our genre, and now it's completely taken over by other cultures, and they've made it their own, and we've been squeezed out completely. And the most you hear about rock and roll is Jimi Hendrix, and that's the only name you might hear mentioned because he was the only one that was sort of, perceived to be like the best of the best. But there were many others, but you don't hear about them. So now we see the same thing happening with hip hop. A lot of people say jazz and R&B and soul and other genres was a similar situation, and even reggae. I would say the same thing with reggae. I would incorporate reggae here the same way I mentioned a little bit about reggae in terms of the negative energy in hip hop. That negative energy also exists in reggae music, and for my family members that's in the Caribbean, they can attest to what I'm trying to say. Is that, okay, they've always been negative energy. They speak about the things in the street and the ghetto and the sufferation of the poor people and the ghetto person and so on. But it's transformed. It's not the same. And it's particularly focused on dance hall music as opposed to reggae in general. Because there's a slight difference between the two, for those who don't know. So it's the same thing here with hip hop. I see this going in the hands of, because remember, let's just break this down quickly. Hip hop was created, as you know, by African Americans for the African community worldwide, not just for the African Americans in the United States. So it was a way for you to, as I say, bring a message and highlight the suffering and the struggles and the injustices that we were going through as a community, and it was successful in doing that. The other part of it was, or should I say, the other equation of it was, it also provided an opportunity for those who came from sort of a impoverished background or don't have the same fortunate background of someone from a middle class or affluent, background. It's enabled them a way to make money and to be entrepreneurs and to become millionaires even. Some of them has become billionaires now out of it. So this is the point I'm trying to make. It was designed and set up for the African community to find a way to make money, people to make money and to make living, a decent and honest living, where other walks of mainstream society did not allow or afford them to do it. So in other words, if you look at the people that's going back again from the 80s, 90s, the 2000s, and even till now, 2019, if you look at the people that's making the real money out of hip hop, it was started by people who, if they go out there to get a 9-to-5 job, they wouldn't get it because they have a prison record. They have, all these different crime records, against them, and nobody would employ them. If they're trying to borrow money to set up a business or whatever, they wouldn't get it. The bank wouldn't help them in any way, and they didn't have nepotism in play because hip hop was young. So you didn't have the entrepreneurs who made money out of hip hop that could then say, listen, I'm going to invest in your business and help you to come up, and in turn you employ people and give them a leg up, and then in turn they set up their own business and employ more people from the African community, and you can see how that would snowball and benefit the whole community in general. So, but when it's infancy stages, you would have to go outside of your genre to try and get money, and they weren't doing anything in terms of finance or anything else to help. So hip hop was the way to do that. But what's happened now is I see increasingly the Latinos and the Caucasians, if you like, that are slowly controlling hip hop. I mean, let's break it down. Some of these people have always been in place from day one. But even though we see people like, the Puff Daddies and the Jay-Z's and the Dr. Dre's and all these people that started from the grassroots coming up, the Kanye West and so on. I think he came from a middle class family background. I wouldn't say he's necessarily from the ghetto per se, the hood. Well, I don't know, maybe, but from what I'm hearing, he used to hang out and mix with people from the hood and etc. because hip hop was a melting pot for the middle class African Americans and the African Americans from the ghetto and the hood. So it was a way for all of them to mix. So I could be wrong on that count in terms of Kanye West's background. But the point I'm trying to make is all these icons that's in hip hop right now, they started off with nothing. Some of them started off in rough background, breaking the law and doing illegal things and doing some really bad things and going to prison and in and out of prison and all this kind of stuff, getting shot, shooting other people, doing all the most until they got the opportunity in hip hop to make something of themselves and transform their life where any other way it wouldn't have been afforded to them to do it. But what's happening now is, now that they've become moguls and they're millionaires and billionaires and they're making money, they're not putting anything into the infrastructure for the next generation. So we have the likes of, all these other record companies, all these mainstream record companies, and the names. They've been there from day one, and they are now slowly giving the opportunities to Latinos and other whites to come in and take over the industry, and it's not really going to the African community as it was meant for. This was a genre meant exclusively for the African community, but they're being slowly shut out, and it's a very clever way they're doing it. In other words, there's an old saying when I was growing up that you don't just rush into a situation, you take your time and go down into it. If you look at an animal that like a predator, they don't just rush the prey. What they do, they creep up as close as possible to close the distance as much as possible so they can spend as least amount of energy as possible to spring and pounce on their prey. And that's what's happening in hip hop. Slowly the Latinos and the Caucasians or whites are slowly creeping in onto hip hop to the point where in the next 5 to 10 years, hip hop will not be what it is that we've known it from the 80s and the 90s anymore. You Google hip hop right now and you'll be shocked to see what comes up in the search results. Now, obviously, now that I've mentioned it, Google might have catch wind of this and they might, switch up the algorithm, whatever. But you know what I'm saying? You be amazed to see when you search for hip hop, what actually comes up in the search results, and what you in your mind you stereotypically think will come up is not what's coming up. The same thing is happening in reggae, which is simultaneously happening alongside it and running in parallel. The Japanese is moving in on hip hop so heavily now, and a lot of Europeans are moving in on hip hop on reggae music so heavily now. I would even argue that the Japanese are more heavily into reggae music than the Jamaicans who started this whole thing. It's now overtaken them, where another culture halfway around the world with a completely different culture and a completely different language is literally on the verge of taking it over and taking it to the next stage. And I dare say are making more money out of reggae than the Jamaicans are making, and they're the ones who started the shit. So it's the same thing that's happening in hip hop. All those icons that started hip hop in New York, they have not laid the groundwork for the next generation to pass the baton on to. So what's happening is, when you look at terms of the awards that's been given out for hip hop, who are the people that own the award organizations? Who are the ones that's deciding who to give the awards to? You look at the backgrounds of these people and you tell me if they come from the African community. I'll wait. The only person that I see is trying to combat that in terms of awards and has an institution in terms of that is BET. And then you have to look into the structure of BET, the board members, the executives and so on, and see where the real money is. And then we start to get into some grey areas. But nevertheless, just to keep it simple, BET is the only sort of organization that's out there trying to do their thing for the African community in that regard, in terms of awards. And even then, the very, African American and African community don't even value the BET awards as much as they'll value an award from, say, the Oscars or or some other award that's been given to them. And it's crazy because I'm like, you need to start putting value on your own and stop putting value on other people's things that they create and fabricate out of thin air. You can fabricate and create your own thing out of thin air and then put value on that and buy into that and invest into that. How about that? How about doing that instead? But that's where that mentality comes in. Then you have people like Jay-Z, who will set up like Tidal, because he's competing against giants, multi-trillion giants like iTunes from Apple and Google Store, and these big massive multi-trillion corporations that literally he can't compete with them, but he's still brave enough to do his own thing. But Jay-Z is just one person. He's just one person. So he has his little record company where he's an executive member of. He has Tidal as well, which is for his streaming. But then, people still put more value on going to iTunes or Google Store than to go to Tidal. And I'm not saying this to try and promote Jay-Z. At the end of the day, I'd rather support a stranger from the African community and build them up and try to encourage that than to build up a stranger from another community which I also don't know, that I've never communicated with. But I have more in common with Jay-Z than I have with the executives that run iTunes, or the executives and the promoters and the CEOs that run Google. So, and that's just being real. And they will say the same thing about me. They will stick to what they know and what they're comfortable with in terms of doing business. So I'm saying the same thing. I don't have to know Jay-Z. I don't have to meet him. I don't have to be his fan. I'm not his fan. I don't really listen to his music like that, to be honest. But at the end of the day, I have to look at the real and recognize the reality and say, we need to start waking up, because we're sleepwalking into disaster. And hip hop, I guarantee you, if we don't make a change and do something about it in the next 5 to 10 years, hip hop will become exactly what rock and roll has done, where it's completely controlled by other cultures, and we are completely shut out because we don't own the record companies. The only other person, okay, you have Birdman, you have, who else is there? You have your, Puff Daddy probably. You have your Kanye West. You have, you have a few artists doing their thing, but they're a drop in the ocean in comparison, and they're like really small grains of ants compared to these big conglomerate multi-billion and multi-trillion companies like Sony and Atlantic and Virgin Records and so on. Not to take anything away from these guys, they've built their stuff over decades from nothing, and they've built it up, and I commend them for that. I'm not taking away any stripes from them at all. What I'm saying is, learn from what they do, see what they do, peep the game, and do your own thing, and do likewise, and then compete fairly and equally in terms of business. That's what I'm saying. You need to have your own logistics, your own platform, your own infrastructure. But at the moment, the highest person right now that's doing anything in hip hop in terms of popularity is, let's face it, it's a Latino in terms of the highest, who's the most popular female rapper right now? Who is she? She's not from the African community. She's Latino. Exactly. She's getting all the awards, all the accolades, and she's been supported by all the big, massive platforms going forwards. Okay, we know who her sort of, I wouldn't say a record label, but we know what camp she's in and who are the people that's managing her and so on and so forth. But what I'm saying to you is, it takes some other people that's bigger than them even to give her that boost. Then it's the same thing for the male. Who is the most popular male artist that's come out in modern history right now? And I'm sorry to disappoint you, it's not Drake. Drake has been up there for quite some time, but that person was a Latino. It was Tekashi 6ix9ine, and everybody wanted a piece of Tekashi 6ix9ine before he went to prison, and allegedly he's out now and free and in hiding somewhere, I don't know, living his life privately. I don't know, he's quiet, he's doing the wise thing, disappear, out of sight, out of mind, and that's the best move you can make. But what I'm saying is, he came in a very short space of time, within a year or 18 months or whatever, and he has completely changed the game. Even he himself said that, he did what he had to do to get himself to the position where he generated the clout which he could turn into money. But okay, things goes wrong. We all know that story and how it went. But the point I'm trying to make to you is, if he didn't do that, or if he got out just before it went south, he would be getting all the awards as the male hip hop artist, if you like. And the funny thing is, these people that's controlling these genres, they have their own Latino audience that they also sell to. But here's the kicker, here's the irony. You as an African American hip hop artist, yeah, you can't go to the Latino community and sell to them like that. They're not going to buy from you like that. So we're allowing other cultures to come in and reap the benefits of our culture and our music. But you have to ask yourself, can you then step into the Latino community and equally reap the benefits? Would they receive you in the same way you've received them? And I guarantee you the answer to that is no, they won't. And that's the thing. They're having the best of both worlds, and we're trying to even get crumbs from our own world. I don't comprehend that at all. I just don't understand it. It's just crazy to me. And I'm not trying to be divisive in any way. I'm just really spilling the real, because I see these things happening. And as I say, these videos that I do is for my, the younger people in my family, because they're into hip hop heavily, and some of them are into grime and stuff like that. And I spoke about the negativity in that because I know they're into it. So I need to open their eyes and let them peep the game, and they can still listen to what they do and into what they do. I'm not going to be preachy and all of that to them, but at least now they have knowledge doing it. And it's the same thing here. They need to have the knowledge so they can look around and they can say, well, I'm not just going to blindly, support this person, because we know if the shoes was on the other foot, they wouldn't even give us a look in. The door would be slammed shut loudly in our faces, and that's just the reality of it. So we need to start peep that game and realize that you need to be able to work with people on an equal platform and on an equal level. I've spoke about what equal opportunity really is. At the moment, it's not equal, because you're allowing them to come in and dominate and take over your genre, and at the same time theirs is protected from you, so you can't step into their space and do your thing in their space, but they can step into your space and dominate it completely, and you sort of promote and egg them on, and it's just crazy to me. And that's all I'm trying to say. We need to just realize that, in terms of hip hop, I don't know where it's going, but I can tell you this: I predict that in the next 5 to 10 years, the African community won't be in control of hip hop. All the faces will be it will be Latinos and Caucasian that's running it, and the African community would be fighting for a crumbs at the very table that they built. So imagine you're a carpenter and you build a table with nothing. You literally go out and chop the tree down, and from chopping the tree down and holding the log back to your workshop, you then made a nice table, and then someone has come along and just take the table from you, and then they spread all the food and everything on the table, and they're eating and enjoying themselves. And every now and again they just, they scrape off a bit of crumbs off the table onto the floor for you to eat. That's what's happening with hip hop right now. These people didn't build it. They didn't build this. As I said, they didn't build this shit. We built it. It was meant for us. It was meant for us to uplift the deprived and the impoverished and the people who are unfortunate, that doesn't have the opportunities that would otherwise afford them in mainstream society. So hip hop was meant as a way for the African community to be able to make money legitimately and to make millionaires out of them. I think the person who said this, correct me if I'm wrong again, but I've listened to a video, I think it was some years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I'm not sure. And I think it was Busta Rhymes that actually said what he likes about hip hop is that it creates entrepreneurs and African Americans to become millionaires. That was one of the cornerstone of hip hop, to create black millionaires, as they say. I don't like to use the term black, to be honest, because it doesn't define a race of people. People are defined from the country they come from, whether you come from India, Pakistan, China, Japan, Philippines, wherever you come from, that define you as your heritage or from your descendants. So the term African or African American or African British or the African community is, for me, a more legitimate description of who we are as a people. Not black, white, green, pink or purple, because that doesn't define anybody. An alien that comes from outer space wouldn't call himself green people. They'll tell you whatever planet they come from, and they'll say they're this people from this planet. They won't say we're the green people from outer space. That don't mean nothing. Anyway, that's a completely another topic I'll talk about in another time. But for now, hip hop, as far as I see, is slowly slipping away from us, from the African, community, and we need to start doing something to rein this back in and keep it within the African community, because we are a minority. We need something to balance out the opportunities for us, because if you look at it, there is no other way. There are opportunities for us, and I hear people say, and I've said it many times. Hip hop is one of the ways for us to sort of guarantee some kind of balance to say, well, you know what? If you try to be this or you try to be that or the other in mainstream society, all the doors have been shut in your face. And it's very rarely that they let someone in at any productive level or at any high or influential level. But hip hop is one way to almost guarantee that if you come in and you're a good performer, with nepotism and with encouragement and so on, you can build and you can rise up, and then you can bring the opportunities, and you can build a whole network of that going forwards. And you can, and hip hop can stem, financial businesses. It can stem, legal businesses, because a lot of these hip hop artists, as you know, they're in and out of jail. They have problems with the law. These things can stem all these other areas. They waste their money. Financial institutions will help them, advise them how to invest their money and so on and so forth. All this is possible through the hip hop community. But if we don't have control of hip hop as an enterprise and we lose it, which we're losing it, then it's only when it's gone we're going to realize, oh hell, this thing that we had was actually bigger than hip hop. Hip hop was like the container, but the amount of stuff that we could have put in it and built from it was limitless. But because your brain was shallow and you can only see as far as the music industry in terms of hip hop, you couldn't see outside of that, outside of that box. So you've lost it. And other cultures can see the other things like the awards, the financial corporations, the medical, the legal, all the other things that stems from management, advertising, labels, different record labels, different streaming services. So many things can stem out of hip hop. Property, building, you name it all. It can all come out of hip hop, because you need headquarters, you need studios, you need equipment, you need technology, there's so many vast areas you can go into. P. Diddy and Dr. Dre and so on scratched the surface. So Puff Daddy came out with the drink, because that's part of clubbing and so on, and the drinking and bottle popping, and so he's capitalizing that area. Jay-Z's done the record and Tidal streaming. Dr. Dre's done the Beats for Dre headphones and he sold it. I was kind of gutted he did. He shouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. They couldn't pay me enough money for me to sell Beats for Dre if I had that patent and copyright. So these are the kind of things that we need to start teaching our children. This is what I'm saying. Hip hop we're losing hip hop. It's going away from us. We're not in control of it. And the Latinos see it for the full potential it is, and so do the Caucasians. And they're about to do, if you read that book, How Did Europe Underdevelop Africa? They're about to do that to hip hop. Once they do, then people are going to say, oh shit, we didn't know we had uranium and gold and diamond and oil and gas and bauxite and chalk and marble and all these different natural resources that we had no clue we had. But then it will be too late, because you don't own it anymore. You've lost it. You've made it slip through your fingers. And you're going to see how they build other industries off the back of hip hop. And you'll be there scratching your head like, how the hell didn't we see this coming? How come we didn't see it? It's because they didn't want you to see it. They devalue your stock to make you sell your stock. And then once you sell your stock for peanuts because you're not interested in it, then you see them take it on the next level, and then that's when you're gutted. Everything I've said in this video is very important for the next generation, the younger generation in my family to see, and this video is for them. And with that said, I'm done.